By the end of the 22nd century, humanity was fleeing a dying Earth. Gigantic arcs filled with humans and the remnants of Earth's fauna set their course for one destination: the Centauri Cluster, a dense collection of stars rumored to hold hundreds, maybe thousands of habitable worlds. And that's exactly what those early travelers found, almost 16,000 years later. They sent back a transmission, the so-called Green World's signal, but the humans who reached Centauri didn't wait for the rest of us to arrive. They began to build, to experiment, to evolve. And when the next wave of humanity finally arrived, what they found waiting at the doorstep of Centauri was anything but human. They had become something else, something greater. They had become celestials. Welcome to this first part in my Exodus lore series. I'm Mr. Holton, and today we're diving into the mystery that are the Celestials. Specifically, the ones that we know the most about. Because here's the thing, there has been many celestial factions that rose and fell throughout the history of the Centauri Cluster. And as much as I'd love to cover every single one of them, most are little more than fragments and rumors. So today we'll be focusing on the ones that we can piece together. The civilizations that defines what it means to be celestial. Before we can talk about the Celestials of the modern era, the ones that exist during the events of Exodus, the video game, we first need to look back. Back to the civilization that defined what it means to be a god among the stars. Not the first, but certainly the greatest civilization to ever exist. The Elohim. The Elohim rose out of the raging furnace that was the Formation Wars, a time when celestial civilizations tore each other to shreds for control of the Centauri Cluster. Entire worlds were stripped of life, rebuilt and stripped again. Power was survival and mercy was a liability. From that chaos, one empire emerged and decided it had seen enough. They called themselves the Elohim. The Elohim unified what was left of the cluster, shaping entire systems through architecture that still baffles modern celestials. The Elohim's most enduring creation, however, wasn't actually their empire, it was control. Through the laws of the Elohim, they imposed a fragile peace across Centauri, a small, absolute set of rules designed to prevent another collapse. Break those laws and your entire world could be cut off from the gates of heaven network, exiled into isolation. It's basically the interstellar equivalent of getting your Wi-Fi network turned off forever. The gates became the arteries of the cluster, a sort of luminous web linking systems across light years. Every ship, every trade route, and every exodus depended on them. You see, the Elohim gave the cluster stability, and in return, everybody obeyed their laws. But then they simply disappeared. Their systems remained active and their laws still enforced. It's like they left the house one day and forgot to log out. Some believe that they transcended into pure energy. Others think that they're still here, hidden inside the infrastructure itself. Maybe ghosts of code and consciousness. Theories range from divine ascension to the most over-engineered burnout ever. Whatever the truth may be, their shadow still governs Centauri. The Celestials that came after still whisper their name. Not in reverence, but in caution. Because the last time someone broke the laws of the Elohim, their world stopped answering. But here's the thing, some Celestials don't have worlds. And despite the power the Elohim represents, there are other Celestials that prove a greater danger to the survival of humanity. And those are the ones that we'll dive into now. The crowned Celestials saw the Elohim as gods, but they didn't worship them. They studied them and then decided they could do better. Because if there's one thing more dangerous than perfection, it's trying to recreate it from memory. You see, over thousands of years, the Crown Dominion took shape. 6 star systems bound by absolute hierarchy, ruled by queens who believed perfection could be engineered. And to an extent, they were right. Each queen leads what's called a mind line, a direct inheritance of thought. You see, when a ruler's body fails, her mind is transferred into a chosen successor, preserving her memories, her personality, and even her ambitions. It's essentially the same consciousness, born again and again, across centuries, millennia. It's a pretty clever way to defeat death, and an even better way to erase progress, because the Dominion doesn't really evolve, it remembers. Every queen alive today has lived countless lives and made the same choices across every single one of them. Even their biology itself reflects this obsession. Crown Dominion males are marsupials, carrying developing offspring in nutrient pouches, while females produce fertilized eggs later implanted into them. The process is very clinical and efficient. Once the young emerge, neural induction begins, imprinting fragments of the parents' personalities directly into the child's brain. Simply put, the Crown Dominion are not very good parents. And somewhere out there, a celestial therapist is probably still trying to figure out how to explain mom issues to someone who's technically been their own mom for 3,000 years. Anyway, after centuries of civil war among the Crown Celestials, the surviving great houses signed what's now called the Imperial Accord of the Crown Stars. In a nutshell, every 60 years the throne passes to the next queen in rotation, a balance of power that has lasted longer than most species have existed. To outsiders, the Dominion looks eternal, regal, untouchable. But immortality has a cost: stagnation. And so one cannot help but wonder if the Crown Dominion Celestials ever ponder about their eternal existence. Now, if the Crown Dominion represents control, then the Deva are what happens when control finally slips away. The Deva are ancient, older than most records and older than most myths. Some say they're what's left of a civilization that once challenged the Elohim themselves. Others think they were created as punishment, that they're immortal wanderers cursed to remember fragments of a history no one else can verify. Unlike the Dominion, the Deva don't build empires. They drift between systems, taking on the role of mentors, scholars, or occasional meddlers. They appear, teach, then disappear again, usually before anybody can decide whether they are actually wise or if they were just messing with you. Physically, they're tall, horned, and eerily symmetrical, with faces that look halfway between serene and someone who's been working 5 night shifts in a row. But what really defines them is the way they think. You see, each Deva's mind is split into multiple conscious layers, fragments of thought operating independently. It's like holding a debate with yourself and somehow, always, losing. Conversations with a Deva can feel profound one moment and completely derailed the next. They'll answer your question with a story, interrupt themselves halfway through, and then thank you for the insights. It's no wonder half of the philosophies in the cluster started because someone tried to make sense of one conversation with the Deva and just gave up halfway. And yet, despite their fractured minds and half-remembered purpose, there's something really peaceful about them. Maybe it's because they stopped pretending to be gods. Maybe because after thousands of years of wandering, they've realized that knowing everything isn't the same as understanding it. Now, if the Deva are wanderers searching for meaning, the Keledai is what happens when a civilization stops searching altogether. The Keledai were once the powerful rulers of the Hilase system, masters of psionics and architecture. Their cities were living sculptures of glass and thought, each one connected through planetary neural grids. But all that's left now are hollow towers and the faint hum of machines that no one remembers how to use. The Keledai withdrew from the cluster a long time ago, and they almost never leave their homeworld, Teladen. Their appearance is unsettlingly uniform, pale, elongated, and expressionless. Communication with the Keledai is almost impossible, because they no longer speak with their voices. Instead, they connect through vast psionic networks that outsiders cannot access. To speak to one, you have to use something called a speaker stone, a monolith that temporarily takes over your body and uses you as a translator. Technically, you could say that it's an honor, though most people would describe it as the worst conversation imaginable. Culturally, they've embraced what they call the euthany. When a Keledai reaches about 2 centuries old, they willingly end their life, transferring their memories into a data archive maintained by their servitor species, the Mon-Yet. Interestingly, it's not actually considered tragic, but expected. It's like a final act of devotion to their collective memory. However, if you are a Keledai that refuse to participate, you will be hunted. Not because your people is angry with you, but because they are trying to maintain tradition. The Keledai don't tolerate bugs in their system. Now, despite their quiet nature, they're still one of the most advanced species in the cluster. They have no armies, no fleets, yet every major power knows not to mess with them. Every few centuries, one of them ascends to the rank of Asunur, a Keledai who achieves such a complete unity of mind that individuality completely dissolves. These beings act as philosophers, guides, and sometimes self-imposed elitists, showing up across the cluster to remind every other species out there that you're doing it all wrong, man. The Keledai don't chase immortality or conquest. They've chosen complete silence. They've seen what happens when knowledge consumes itself, and they've decided that the smartest move is to stop playing altogether. They're the responsible type of gamer that finally decides to touch grass. All the grass. They're essentially hippies. Weird, scary space hippies. Now, the Celestials we've covered so far represent power, knowledge, and mystery. And this next category of Celestial represents all of those combined, but most of all, absolute terror. The Mara Yama. Their name alone carries weight across the cluster. Entire fleets have vanished near their territory, leaving behind only drifting wreckage and black box recordings full of distorted voices that sound almost human. But here's the thing, they weren't always monsters. Ancient records hint that the Mara Yama might have descended from Celestials who fled the wars of the Dominion. But in the radiation-soaked dead zones beyond known space, they adapted, or maybe devolved. Now they exist as a strange hybrid of biology and machinery, their bodies long since warped by the environments they conquered. In zero gravity, they're misshapen and weightless, using gravity boards to glide through the living corridors of their ships. They almost look graceful until they decide to visit your planet. Then they undergo a process called regenerative hardening, forcing their bodies to rebuild dense bone and muscle until they become towering predators that come in all shapes and sizes. It's like watching a cocoon hatch into something that immediately wants to kill you. Some Mara Yama even merge, literally fusing their bodies together into grotesque giants. Their ships are covered in the faces of multitudes of Mara Yama because they fused so hard that individual Mara Yama started poking out of the hull. Ew. Now you'd think that that would make them easier to hate, but then you realize their ships are also alive, vast ecosystems of limestone and bioluminescent gardens. It's beautiful, haunting, and horrifying. You're walking through a Mara ship, and it's like walking through a flowery cathedral that's actively digesting you. Now, unlike other predatory species of the cluster, the Mara Yama don't actually hunt for resources. They hunt for experience. They invade minds, feeding on memories, sensations, emotions, anything that reminds them what it's like to feel alive. Survivors have described it as being dissected by empathy itself. One moment, they're in your mind reliving your happiest moment. The next, they'll be asking you why you cried to the ending of Titanic. To be frank with you, nobody really knows what they want anymore. Maybe they're trying to evolve past their own decay. Maybe they're just bored. What is certain is that they have built an entire civilization surrounding one belief: that existence must continue no matter the cost. They've forgotten peace. They've forgotten purpose. The Mara Yama are what happens when the desire to feel something outlives the capacity to feel anything at all. They are the final mirror held up to human ambition. A species that refused to die, and in so doing, forgot what it meant to live. This has been Mr. Holton. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow.